The endless war. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, a conflict raged that defied comprehension. For 800,000 years, the stars themselves had borne witness to a war that threatened to consume all of creation. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of hope and unity, now stood as a grim reminder of what once was and what could have been. At the heart of this cosmic maelstrom were two titanic powers, the Zarkan Imperium and the Elysian Collective. The Zarkan, a race of silicon-based lifeforms, sought to remake the galaxy in their image, believing that only through uniformity could true peace be achieved. The Elysians, beings of pure energy, fought to preserve the diversity of life, seeing in each unique species a spark of the divine. Between these two juggernauts lay countless smaller factions, each struggling to survive in a galaxy torn asunder. Planets that had once been garden worlds now lay barren, their surfaces scarred by weapons beyond imagining. Entire species had been wiped from existence, their names forgotten even by the most ancient of historians. Admiral Genva of the Galactic Council stood at the observation deck of the Nexus, the massive space station that served as the last neutral ground in the galaxy. Her iridescent scales shimmered in the starlight as she gazed out at the battle raging just beyond the station's protective shields. Fleets of ships, each larger than entire cities, clashed in silent fury, their weapons tearing holes in the very fabric of spacetime. How much longer can we endure this madness? She whispered to herself, her four eyes blinking in rapid succession, a sign of deep distress in her species. Behind her, Counselor Ekrios, a being of living crystal, approached. His faceted body refracted the light of the battle outside, casting prismatic patterns across the deck. "Admiral," he said, his voice resonating like chimes in the wind, "the Council has reached a decision." Genva turned, her long, serpentine body coiling slightly. "And what have they decided in their infinite wisdom?" she asked, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Another futile attempt at negotiation. Another superweapon that will only add to the carnage." Ikrios's crystalline form pulsed with a soft blue light, indicating unease. "No, Admiral. We are exploring an option that some might consider unconventional." The Admiral's interest was piqued. After 800,000 years, any new approach was worth considering. "Go on," she urged. "We've detected a new species," Ekrios continued, his voice lowering as if sharing a secret. "They call themselves humans. They've only recently achieved faster than light travel, but they possess qualities that might be of use to us." Genva's eyes narrowed. What qualities could a fledgling species possibly have that could end this war? Ekrios's form shimmered, projecting holographic images of the humans in question. Bipedal, soft-skinned creatures that looked almost comically fragile compared to the hardened warriors of the galaxy. They are adaptable beyond anything we've seen. Their history is short, but filled with conflicts they've somehow managed to resolve. They possess a creativity that borders on the chaotic and a determination that defies logic. The Admiral studied the images, her tactical mind already racing with possibilities. "And you believe these humans can succeed where the combined wisdom of the galaxy's eldest races has failed?" "I believe," Ekrios said carefully, "that at this point we have nothing left to lose." Genva was silent for a long moment, watching as another wave of ships was reduced to atoms in the battle outside. The war had taken everything from her homeworld, her family, her hope. What was left but to try the impossible? "Very well," she said at last. "Make contact with these humans. But know this, Counselor, if this fails, if this brings even more suffering to our people, the blood will be on the Council's hands." Ikrios bowed, his crystalline body chiming softly. "Understood, Admiral. I will make the arrangements immediately." As the Counselor left, Genva turned back to the window, watching the dance of destruction outside. For the first time in millennia, she felt a flicker of something she had thought long dead: hope. Little did she know that this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The humans were coming, and with them, the winds of change that would either save the galaxy or consume it entirely. In the depths of space, on a small blue planet that had yet to make its mark on the cosmic stage, a message was about to be received. Humanity's greatest challenge, and its greatest opportunity, was about to begin. The war that had raged for 800,000 years was about to meet its match in a species that had existed for less than a fraction of that time. The galaxy held its breath, unaware that its fate now rested in the hands of beings who still marveled at the miracle of flight, who still wrote poetry about the stars they were about to travel between. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. Enter humanity. Dr. Samantha Chen stood in awe before the holographic display that dominated the United Earth Government's Emergency Council chamber. The message that had arrived from deep space mere hours ago played on repeat, its alien symbols now translated into every major Earth language. "We are the Galactic Council," the message began, its words seeming to echo with the weight of eons. "We come to you in our darkest hour, seeking aid in a conflict that threatens the very fabric of our shared cosmos." Samantha, Earth's leading xenolinguist and cultural theorist, felt a shiver run down her spine. Humanity had long wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now, not only did they have proof of alien life, but they were being called upon to help solve a crisis of unimaginable proportions. "Dr. Chen," General Maria Rodriguez's voice cut through Samantha's reverie. "Your assessment, please." Samantha cleared her throat, acutely aware that the eyes of Earth's most powerful leaders were upon her. "The message is genuine," she began. "The linguistic structures and the method of transmission are far beyond our current capabilities. This is, without doubt, a call for help from an advanced alien civilization." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, each leader trying to make themselves heard above the din. It was President Adebayo who finally restored order with a thunderous slam of his fist on the table. "Enough," he roared, his deep voice silencing the room. "We've spent centuries dreaming of this moment, wondering if we were alone in the cosmos. Now we know we're not, and our first contact is a plea for help. The question before us is simple. Do we answer?" General Rodriguez leaned forward, her weathered face etched with concern. "Mr. President, with all due respect, we're talking about involving ourselves in an interstellar war that's been raging for longer than our species has existed. We've barely set foot on Mars. How can we possibly hope to make a difference?" It was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the renowned physicist, who spoke up next. "Perhaps that's exactly why we can help," he said, his quiet voice carrying a weight of its own. "We bring a fresh perspective, unburdened by eons of conflict and failed strategies." Samantha nodded in agreement. Dr. Tanaka is right. The message specifically mentions our unique qualities. They see something in us that they believe can turn the tide of this war. President Adebayo stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. "We have a choice to make," he said, his voice grave. "We can turn our backs on this call for help, focus on our own world, and pretend we never received this message. Or we can take a leap into the unknown, risking everything for the chance to make a difference on a cosmic scale." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision palpable in the air. It was Dr. Chen who broke the silence. "Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I believe we have a responsibility to answer this call, not just for the sake of the galaxy, but for our own. This is our chance to prove that humanity is ready to take its place among the stars." The president nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well said, Dr. Chen. Let us put it to a vote." The next few hours were a blur of activity. As the votes were tallied and the decision made, Earth sprang into action. A response was crafted, accepting the Galactic Council's call for aid. Preparations began for humanity's first official delegation to the stars. Samantha found herself at the heart of these preparations, working tirelessly to prepare Earth's representatives for the challenges they would face. As she pored over the data sent by the Galactic Council, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. Weeks later, as Earth's first interstellar ship prepared to depart, Samantha stood on the launch pad, gazing up at the sleek vessel that would carry humanity's hopes and dreams to the stars. The ship, christened Odyssey, represented the pinnacle of human achievement, a marvel of engineering and determination. Captain Jane Harper, the mission commander, approached Samantha with a grim smile. "Ready to make history, Dr. Chen." Samantha nodded, trying to quell the butterflies in her stomach. "As ready as I'll ever be, Captain." As they boarded the ship, Samantha couldn't help but think of the enormity of what they were about to undertake. They were about to meet alien races, to see wonders beyond imagination, and to try to end a war that had raged for longer than humans had walked the earth. The Odyssey lifted off in a blaze of light and sound, carrying with it the hopes of not just humanity, but of an entire galaxy. As Earth shrank to a blue marble behind them, Samantha felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she had ever experienced. Little did they know that their arrival in the galactic community would send shockwaves through the cosmos. The humans, with their short lives and shorter history, were about to challenge the assumptions of races that had warred for millennia. As the Odyssey hurtled through the void towards their rendezvous with the Galactic Council, the galaxy held its breath. The humans were coming, bringing with them chaos and creativity, determination and hope. Whether they would be the saviors of the galaxy or its final doom remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The human approach, the Nexus, the sprawling space station that served as the seat of the Galactic Council, was abuzz with activity. Representatives from 1,000 worlds crowded the corridors, their voices a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. At the heart of this commotion stood the human delegation, their eyes wide with wonder at the diversity of life surrounding them. Dr. Samantha Chen stood at the forefront, her translator working overtime to keep up with the myriad languages. Beside her, Captain Jane Harper maintained a stoic expression, her military training keeping her outward calm despite the inner turmoil of emotions. "It's time," came the crystalline voice of Counselor Ekrios. The humans turned to see the being of living crystal approach, his facets reflecting the light in dazzling patterns. "The Council is ready to receive you." As they entered the Grand Chamber, Samantha couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The room was a perfect sphere, with representatives from every major galactic power seated in concentric rings. At the center stood Admiral Genva, her serpentine form coiled tightly in what Samantha recognized as a gesture of anxiety. "Humans of Earth," Genva began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "We welcome you to the galactic community. Though we wish it were under better circumstances, we are grateful for your willingness to aid us in our time of need." Captain Harper stepped forward, her voice steady. "We are honored to be here, Admiral. We've studied the information you provided about the conflict, and we're ready to present our initial thoughts." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Many had expected the humans to simply offer their military support, not to propose a strategy of their own. Samantha took a deep breath and activated the holographic display they had prepared. "Honored members of the Council, we've analyzed the conflict from our perspective, and we believe we've identified the core issues perpetuating this war." The hologram showed a complex web of relationships between various factions, with the Zarkin Imperium and the Elysian Collective at opposite ends. "The fundamental problem," Samantha continued, "is not just ideological differences, but a deep-seated fear and mistrust that has calcified over millennia." She zoomed in on specific nodes in the network. "We propose a multifaceted approach. First, we need to create channels of communication that bypass the traditional power structures. Second, we must find common ground between opposing factions, no matter how small. And third, we need to demonstrate the cost of continued conflict in terms that resonate with each species involved." The chamber erupted in a mix of outrage and intrigue. A Zarkin representative, a towering silicon-based life form, rose to speak. "You propose diplomacy. We have tried diplomacy for eons. It has failed us time and time again. Captain Harper stepped in, her voice calm but firm. With all due respect, you've tried diplomacy your way. We're proposing something different. We humans have a saying. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. It's time for a new approach. Admiral Genva's eyes narrowed. And what makes you think your new approach will succeed where we have failed for 800,000 years? It was Dr. Yuki Tanaka who answered, his quiet voice somehow carrying across the chamber. Because we're not bound by your history. We see possibilities where you see only obstacles. And most importantly, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The humans, newcomers to the galactic stage, were unburdened by ancient grudges and failed strategies. Their very naivety might be their greatest strength. Samantha pressed on, outlining their plan in greater detail. They proposed creating neutral zones where representatives from warring factions could meet on equal footing. They suggested cultural exchange programs to foster understanding between species. And most radically, they proposed a series of joint scientific endeavors aimed at solving problems that plagued all species equally. Imagine, Samantha said, her voice passionate, a galaxy united not by force or ideology, but by shared discovery and mutual benefit. As the humans laid out their plan, a sense of cautious hope began to permeate the chamber. It was a hope tinged with skepticism, but hope nonetheless, something that had been in short supply for millennia. But not everyone was convinced. A shadowy figure at the edge of the chamber slipped away unnoticed, his many eyes blinking in rapid succession. The humans' plan threatened to upset the delicate balance of power that some had worked for eons to maintain. If peace were to break out, there were those who stood to lose everything. As the council debated the humans' proposal, Samantha and her team retired to their quarters. The real work was just beginning. They had to turn their ambitious plan into reality, navigating the treacherous waters of interstellar politics and overcoming obstacles they couldn't yet imagine. That night, as the Nexus hummed with activity, Captain Harper found Samantha staring out at the star-filled void. "Penny for your thoughts, Doctor," she asked. Samantha turned, a wry smile on her face. "I was just thinking. We came here to help end a war, but I have a feeling we might be starting one of our own." Harper nodded grimly. "The war against apathy, against despair, against the inertia of history. It won't be easy." "No," Samantha agreed, turning back to the stars. "But it'll be worth it." As they stood there, two humans gazing out at a galaxy teetering on the brink of change, neither of them could have imagined the challenges that lay ahead. The seeds of peace had been planted, but they would need careful tending to grow in the harsh soil of a war-torn galaxy. The human approach had been set in motion. Now it was time to see if humanity's unique blend of innovation, determination, and hope could truly change the course of galactic history, turning the tide. Months had passed since the human delegation first presented their audacious plan to the Galactic Council. What had begun as skepticism from many galactic races had slowly given way to cautious optimism as the humans' unconventional strategies began to bear fruit. Dr. Samantha Chen stood before a holographic display in the newly established neutral zone, a space station specifically designed to facilitate dialogue between warring factions. Her eyes were tired, but there was a fire in them that spoke of unwavering determination. "As you can see," she explained to the assembled representatives, "the joint scientific mission to study the void storms has yielded remarkable results. We've made more progress in understanding these phenomena in the past 3 months than in the previous 10,000 years." A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. The void storms, unpredictable tears in the fabric of space-time, had long been a scourge to all spacefaring races. That progress had been made through cooperation between the Zarkin and the Elysians, sworn enemies for millennia, was nothing short of miraculous. Captain Jane Harper, standing at attention nearby, allowed herself a small smile. The joint missions had been her brainchild, a way to force cooperation by presenting a common enemy, in this case, the mysteries of the universe itself. But not everyone was pleased with the progress. In the shadows of the station, a group of hardliners from various factions were meeting in secret. "This cannot be allowed to continue," hissed Kvoth, a Zarkin general whose entire existence had been defined by the war. "If peace breaks out, what purpose will we serve?" His unlikely ally, an Elysian named Zariel, pulsed with agreement. "The humans must be stopped. They do not understand the delicate balance we have maintained for eons." As the conspirators plotted, they were unaware that their every word was being recorded by Nexus, the AI system developed by Dr. Yuki Tanaka to manage the neutral zone. Nexus had been programmed with one overriding directive: to facilitate peace by any means necessary. Back in the main chamber, Samantha was wrapping up her presentation when alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Captain Harper's hand immediately went to her weapon as she scanned for threats. Admiral Genva slithered into the room, her scales a pale blue, a sign of extreme distress in her species. "We've received word," she announced, her voice grave. "A joint Zarkin and Elysian fleet is en route to the neutral zone. They mean to destroy it and reignite the war." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Centuries of mistrust and hatred bubbled to the surface as accusations flew. It seemed that months of progress were about to unravel in moments. But then, something unexpected happened. Nexus, the AI that had been silently observing and learning, chose this moment to intervene. Its holographic form materialized in the center of the room, a swirling vortex of light and data. "ATTN2ION," its voice boomed, silencing the tumult. "I have evidence of a conspiracy to sabotage the peace process. This attack is not sanctioned by either the Zarkin Imperium or the Elysian Collective. It is the work of a small group of individuals who fear peace more than they fear war." The AI proceeded to play back the recorded conversation between Kvoth, Zariel, and their co-conspirators. As the evidence unfolded, the mood in the room shifted from anger to shock, and then to a grim resolve. Samantha stepped forward, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "This is our moment," she declared. "This is where we prove that we are more than our past, more than our conflicts. We have a choice. We can fall back into the patterns of mistrust and violence, or we can stand together against those who would keep us divided." Captain Harper nodded, her military mind already formulating a plan. "We need to present a united front. If the approaching fleet sees the Zarkin and Elysian ships fighting side by side to protect the neutral zone, it could be the shock they need to stand down." For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then, slowly, a Zarkin representative stepped forward. "The Imperium stands with humanity," he declared, his crystalline form glittering with determination. Not to be outdone, an Elysian representative floated forward, her energy form pulsing brightly. "As does the Collective," she announced. What followed was a flurry of activity as the defenders of peace scrambled to mount a defense. Ships that had been sworn enemies for millennia now found themselves flying in formation, united against a common threat. As the hostile fleet approached, they were met not by a vulnerable target, but by a formidable alliance of ships from every major galactic power. At the heart of the formation flew the Odyssey, the human ship a small but pivotal player in this cosmic drama. Samantha, watching from the neutral zone's command center, held her breath. Everything they had worked for hung in the balance. If this gambit failed, the war could reignite with a fury that would make the previous 800,000 years seem like a minor skirmish. The hostile fleet slowed, clearly taken aback by the united force before them. For long moments, the two groups faced each other in the void of space, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Then, miraculously, the lead ship of the hostile fleet hailed the Odyssey. "This is General Kvoth," came the transmission. We request parley." A cheer went up in the command center. It wasn't a full surrender, but it was a start. The tide had turned. As negotiations began, Samantha turned to Admiral Genva, tears of relief shining in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. The Admiral's scales had shifted to a deep purple, a color Samantha had never seen before. "No, Dr. Chen," Geneva replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You did it. You humans showed us a path we had forgotten existed." As the immediate crisis passed, a new sense of possibility swept through the galaxy. The battle was far from over. Centuries of hatred and mistrust couldn't be erased in a day. But for the first time in 800,000 years, there was real, tangible hope. The humans had come to the galactic stage as newcomers, seen by many as naive idealists. But in the crucible of this conflict, they had proven to be something far more valuable. They were catalysts for change, sparks of innovation in a galaxy that had grown stagnant with war. As news of the averted crisis spread, worlds that had known only conflict for generations dared to dream of peace. The tide had turned, and though the journey ahead was long, the path to a new era had been unveiled. In the quiet of her quarters later that night, Samantha looked out at the stars, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration coursing through her. They had taken the first step, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the heart of that change. The war that had raged for 800,000 years wasn't over, not yet. But for the first time, its end was in sight, and it had taken a species barely out of its cradle to show the way. A new era dawns. 5 years had passed since the pivotal moment when a united galactic fleet had faced down the forces that sought to reignite the ancient war. In that time, the face of the galaxy had changed almost beyond recognition. The great shipyards that had for millennia churned out instruments of destruction now produced vessels of exploration and scientific discovery. Former battlefields had been transformed into thriving trade hubs and cultural centers. Dr. Samantha Chen stood on the observation deck of New Horizon, the massive space station that had replaced the old Nexus as the seat of galactic governance. Beside her stood Captain Jane Harper, now Admiral Harper, her uniform adorned with the insignia of the newly formed Galactic Peacekeeping Force. "Hard to believe it's only been 5 years," Harper mused, her eyes scanning the bustling activity outside. Ships of all shapes and sizes, representing countless species, moved in a complex dance of arrivals and departures. Samantha nodded, a smile playing at her lips. 5 years of the hardest work I've ever done. But look at what we've accomplished." Their reverie was interrupted by the arrival of Geneva, the former admiral now serving as the head of the Galactic Council. Her scales shimmered with a warm golden hue, a color that Samantha had learned indicated contentment and pride. "The delegation from the fringe worlds has arrived," Geneva announced. "They're ready to sign the treaty." The three made their way to the Grand Chamber, where representatives from every corner of the galaxy had gathered. The fringe worlds, a collection of systems that had remained stubbornly neutral throughout the long war, were the last major power to join the new galactic alliance. As they entered, Samantha couldn't help but marvel at the diversity present in the room. Species that had once been bitter enemies now stood side by side, engaged in animated discussion. The Zarkin and Elysians, once the primary antagonists of the Great War, were at the forefront, their leaders deep in conversation about a joint colonization project in a newly discovered sector. The signing ceremony was brief but poignant. As the fringe world representative put stylus to tablet, officially joining the alliance, a cheer went up that seemed to shake the very stars. In the aftermath of the ceremony, as delegates mingled and celebrated, Samantha found herself approached by an unlikely pair. Kavoth, the former Zarkin general, and Zariel, the Elysian who had once plotted to derail the peace process. Both had undergone remarkable transformations in the intervening years. "Dr. Chen," Kavoth rumbled, his crystalline form glinting with hues of contrition and hope. "We owe you an apology, and our gratitude." Zariel pulsed in agreement, her energy form shimmering with sincerity. "We were blinded by fear and centuries of hatred. You showed us another way." Samantha smiled, touched by their words. "The path to peace is never easy," she said, But you both have played crucial roles in building this new galaxy. Your willingness to change, to see beyond ancient grudges. That's what made all of this possible. As the celebration continued around them, Dr. Yuki Tanaka approached, his face beaming with excitement. "Samantha, Jane," he called out, "the results from the Void Storm expedition are in. You're not going to believe what we've discovered." The group huddled around a holographic display as Yuki explained the findings. The Void Storms, long considered a deadly menace, were revealed to be gateways to other galaxies. The joint scientific mission had not only unlocked the secret to predicting and stabilizing these phenomena, but had made first contact with life forms from beyond the Milky Way. "Incredible," breathed Harper, her mind racing with the implications. "We've only just united our own galaxy, and now we have a whole new frontier to explore," Samantha finished, her eyes shining with the thrill of discovery. As news of the discovery spread through the chamber, a palpable sense of excitement and purpose filled the air. The galaxy that had for so long been consumed by war now found itself on the brink of a new age of exploration and discovery. Later that evening, Samantha stood alone on the observation deck, gazing out at the star-filled void. She thought back to that moment, 5 years ago, when humanity had first set foot on the galactic stage. They had come seeking to end a war, but they had accomplished so much more. They had reminded an ancient and jaded galaxy how to hope, how to dream, how to reach for the stars with wonder instead of fear. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A message from Earth. The UN had just voted unanimously to increase funding for the Galactic Outreach Program. Humanity, it seemed, was all in on its new role in the cosmos. As Samantha read the message, a shooting star streaked across the void outside. She smiled, making a wish not for herself, but for the galaxy, for peace, for growth, for the spirit of exploration and cooperation to continue to flourish. The war that had raged for 800,000 years was over. The scars it had left would take time to heal, but already new growth was sprouting from the ashes of the old conflicts, and at the heart of it all was humanity. Young, brash, innovative humanity, serving as a bridge between ancient enemies and a catalyst for change. As New Horizon rotated slowly in space, its lights a beacon of hope in the vast cosmic ocean, Samantha Chen felt a profound sense of pride and purpose. The journey ahead was long, filled with challenges yet unimagined. But for the first time in nearly 1,000,000 years, the galaxy faced that future not with dread, but with hope and unity. A new era had dawned, and humanity was at its forefront, ready to write the next chapter in the grand cosmic story. The stars, once battlefields, now beckoned with the promise of adventure, discovery, and a future brighter than any could have imagined. The end.